Now, there was plenty going on yesterday, but it was all the same, really, wasn't it? We had Jonathan Van Tam getting up in the morning telling us about how terrible it all was, lots of nice graphs showing the trajectory going like that. Then we had Boris Johnson in the House of Commons. Then we had Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak talking later with another Professor Witty scenario. Esther Krakue is here with me. Esther, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the Independent Republic. Thank you very much. Also, you're going to do Plank of the Week later, which is going to be great fun. And I'm sure that Messrs Witty, Johnson and Sunak may in fact appear on that. Maybe
a feature.
But what are you making of it all? Because here we are thinking, I think I made a prediction, I think back in July, where I had a piece of soap on my sink, and I said, by the time I've used that soap up, the pandemic will be over. Now it's nearly finished, right? Because obviously I wash my hands when I get home with the soap, and it's tiny now. Okay. But I fear that I may have to break open another bar of soap because it's not going to be finished when the soap does.
Yeah. This lockdown is insufferable. Isn't it? I feel like it's just no one listening.
Right.
It's so ridiculous, and people keep saying, oh, but the coronavirus. At this point, to keep something like this up, you really have to make the boogeyman very scary.
Really?
Right? The coronavirus has to be ripping through communities, killing.
Yeah, and also, can they stop using that phrase? It's really annoying me. Matt Hancock talks about it all the time. Well, of course, we can't let the virus rip through the community. Why does he use that? Why does he use those words, though? It's so evocative.
Yeah, but why not? This is the thing. This is the nature of a virus like this. I think, the opportunity cost is completely not worth it, in my opinion. There are people dying of other things that they really shouldn't be dying of because, these people are insisting on crashing our economy for effectively a flu.
Yeah.
Right? It's, in the beginning of this pandemic, people were saying, don't call it a flu, don't call it a flu. Well, 8 months down the line, I think we can pretty much say it's a flu.
Well, they're also now saying that they're actually going to conjoin the figures for flu and COVID in the coronavirus actual report. So
which is ridiculous.
When people say to you, oh, that's irresponsible to call it the flu, they're doing the same thing. They're actually they're conflating the two, and so they're going to be conjoining the figures so that when we see the figures for next week, they will actually be for flu and COVID. Yeah. Almost as if the COVID figures aren't bad enough, so they have to add the flu ones in.
And one thing I've noticed is, the cases may be going up, but the death rate is just nowhere near. And I think that's what most people care about. If people aren't actually dying of this, if this is something that's eventually going to pass, if this is something that even amongst like the over 75s, like the survival rate is like 95+ percentage. This is something you can't scare people with statistics.
Well,
like
one of the stats they used yesterday was that for people over 85, it's very dangerous. Well. Yeah. The average age of death in this country is less than 85. So, I'm not trying to be callous here, but basically, if you're over 85, you're already in a pretty good winning situation anyway.
Exactly. You've lived a pretty good life.
You've lived a pretty good life, and you're actually now older than the average age of people who die.
Yeah.
So, and all the people who've been in touch with me today and on other days as well, who are older and who are vulnerable, say, look, we don't want to be locked away.
Yeah.
We don't want the young to be locked away. We'd like to see our grandchildren. Life is precious. Yeah. I don't want to spend the last years of my life sitting on my own in a room, seeing nobody.
Yeah, because of a flu. And, people don't understand. There are families that have lost businesses in the space of months.
Right.
That is horrific. That is a horrifying thought. Something you've put months behind. And Boris just says, oh, we don't want to do this. Well, then don't.
Yeah, right.
Because what you're giving up to contain a flu, effectively, which is still going to rip through communities. And I'm really questioning if masks are working at this point, because I don't think they are. It's just not worth it.
Well, there are two questions that interest me. One, all of the countries in Europe that are now suffering massively, like Spain and France, have been using masks as mandatory, not just inside, but outside as well, for months, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, how come the disease is so widespread?
Oh, they're like, the two people that don't wear masks. I'm like, okay, you can just admit you don't really know how this virus is spread.
Right.
And, that's not fun. But at the end of the day, we know the survival rate is still pretty bloody high. So we just have to learn to live with it.
Exactly. And we have to be grown up about it. And I just worry that Boris Johnson isn't being very grown up.
And he's not being very honest, which is
he doesn't look very well still. And, I don't wish to cast aspersions on his health, but he's clearly had a bad time with COVID. Yeah. And he's clearly still not back to normal. He's still recovering from it, And maybe if you are that close to me, I've never been in an ICU unit. Maybe if I had been in one, I would also be nervous about it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the effect that it has on you, and you start to change as an individual. But he used to be a guy that would basically cycle around Britain without a helmet on. He didn't care. He'd wave to people. He was sort of Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. He's now completely changed. His entire kind of
outlook
character
on everything,
and outlook is different, isn't it?
Can I just ask, where is the opposition? Like, what is the point of an opposition if it's not opposing?
It's over there. So Keir Stoner, as I like to call him. I mean, this is a guy
just useless.
Well, I mean, he eventually said something interesting last Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions when he said, yeah, he actually asked Boris Johnson to provide medical evidence of the 10 p.m. curfew, right?
Yep.
Which I thought, this is actually quite a significant moment. The next day, he then said, oh, it's fine. We agree with you.
We agree with you. And,
there was no evidence.
There's only one science you can listen to, and that's the science that Boris agrees with. Because apparently, you don't have science that, disputes each other, or scientists that don't agree with each other. Now everyone's saying masks work, even though we're clearly saying they don't.
Well, this great declaration, the Barrington Declaration, which people like Carol Sikora have signed, Carl Hennigan, Professor Gupta, very eminent and very well recommended scientists, differ from what it is that these idiots in the chief medical officer's office think.
Yeah.
I mean, old Jean-Claude Van Damme, as we like to call him. I mean, what's he doing? He's out there going, oh yes, there are more people in hospital than there were in March. Well, that's because March there weren't very many people in hospital from COVID because it hadn't really hit yet.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
No, but so what? Are people getting the kind of treatment they need for cancer and other actually deadlier illnesses? This is what, and you saw the open letter signed by the Belgian doctors a few months ago. It's like no one is listening.
Right.
Everyone is just listening to what they want to hear. And I don't know if there's some sadists that we have in government that are enjoying, treating the country like a bunch of idiots.
I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't. Because the idea that they want you to sort of not do anything, not spend any money, not go anywhere, it's bizarre. I mean, now, for example, I see more and more people walking around on the streets wearing a mask. I don't wear a mask on the street.
Yeah, because that's the peak of stupidity.
It really is. I mean, there is no point. I also find it quite constricting. I don't like it. I've stopped going on the tube again because I now have to wear it like for a lot longer than I used to, because I used to just be able to wear it when I got on the train, but now they give you a hard time if you're not wearing one going down the escalator. Yeah. And I don't want to wear one for that long. It's uncomfortable. It makes me very hot. It makes me kind of breathless. I just don't like it.
I think the point is we actually don't know how it's
and
you're breathing in the same air you're breathing out. It's so horrible.
Right.
But I think it's clear that we don't know how this virus is spread, honestly, because anyone can see that these masks are not working. And in places like Sweden where they're not masked up, they're achieving similar results. So clearly, I don't know how this is being spread, whether it's like through laughter or whatever. But
what's happening back in Africa where your family are? What are they doing? How are they dealing?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, because it's hotter, right? It's like 30 degrees now, and most of the year consistently, it's either hot and raining or hot and not raining.
Right.
And my friends are telling me people are acting like COVID doesn't even exist.
Right.
Because obviously it's a hotter climate, so
so it doesn't live as well.
Exactly,
there,
and it's just flu is not really a thing. Like you'd have more serious illnesses like malaria and stuff like that. But I've never.
Although you say that, but back in I suppose March, which would have been autumn for Australia or for that part of the world, it was spreading quite well
rapid,
there.
Yeah.
And similarly in Brazil, it was spreading quite. And in America, which was pretty hot at the time, it was spreading.
I don't know what it is. Maybe, but the thing is, because it's such a new virus, we don't really know what it is. But apparently, it's under control there quite well. Most people are just moving about.
Yeah. And how are you finding how is it affecting you personally?
I don't care. I'm past the point
because you're
of
young.
caring.
I mean, but you shouldn't have to care.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is my thing about when you see. I was reporting the other day that I saw people in Peckham one night. That not only were they happy to be kicked out of the pub, and they're sort of coagulating in the street, they were playing cricket.
Yeah.
There was a cricket match, right? And you kind of go, this is what London is, right?
Yeah.
People playing cricket, a guy bowling, another guy batting, a whole crowd of people. No, I don't know. The video was only about a minute and a half long. It looked like great fun. I mean, if I was younger, that's what I'd be doing. And if you're, in your 20s like you are, why would you be frightened of it?
Yeah.
I
just don't care. I think I'm more frustrated with the fact that these people are not being honest with us. It's very clear. They're just going off the same thing, and I don't know what's happened to Boris. It's kind of like a whole personality shift, but this is not what we signed up for. Right. Just get Brexit done and don't crash our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very simple message. It's very easy to understand. Let's talk about your update on the lovely Dawn Butler. I saw that she got up in Parliament yesterday. I don't know what was the reason for it, but when she got up yesterday to speak, she had to make some apologies to the speaker. I don't know what happened, but it was it reminded me that she was there, which is never a great thing. But I mean, so you've basically been trying to find this footage, haven't you?
Yeah.
The police footage from the incident in Hackney.
Yeah.
How many months ago now? 3 months ago?
3 months ago, August 14th.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I memorized the date as well. This would be a whole lot easier if Dawn just asked for the footage herself.
Right.
Because she's in the footage, right? And for someone who was so happy to put her version of the story and her, shoddily filmed, very dodgily filmed footage of it, and send it to Sky News and BBC and all the rest of it. You would think she would just ask for it, just to put the whole thing out there, just to say, actually,
so here's the police's version of what happened.
Right. But she hasn't, so I've had to, jump through all sorts of hoops. I originally asked the Metropolitan Police to release it. They said no, and they actually said in the letter, it would be likely we would release it if Dawn herself asked for it, which is, again, not a shock. And so I've sent it to the MPS Centre in Sidcup, so to appeal it, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to the Information Commissioner, and if that doesn't work, I'm appealing to the Information Commissioner.
Right. So, and is there a reason for not releasing it that she hasn't given permission? Is that what has to happen?
Yeah, and they said, it's it's not necessarily breaking protocol, but it's something that they haven't done before. No. And obviously because situations like this don't happen very often, MPs don't run to Twitter and the BBC and just make these sorts of allegations.
But the Police Federation, which is the union representing the police, have also called for it to be released.
Yeah,
so you would think that it would be in their interest to do it, wouldn't you?
Exactly. And so I don't even know what it is now. I don't know if they're protecting her. I don't know if they want more pressure. But at least I'm happy there is a bit more of a transparent process to try and get it released.
Right.
Like I said, Dawn asked for the footage to be released. What are you hiding? But if she doesn't, I'm just going to keep going through the legal channels.
Just keep going. You could be doing this for years.
I could be, yeah, but it infuriates me, because if you put yourself in the shoes of the police officers who were just doing their job that day, that was so unfair.
Yeah.
So unfair to plaster their faces on social media for your horde of half-wits to just descend upon them as racist bigots when they were just doing their job, and they apologized that they made a mistake.
Right.
And you were saying, oh, me and I'm going to call him racially ambiguous because that man did not look black.
Right.
And my racially ambiguous friend was stopped because this, that, and the other.
Right.
And then the police chief comes out 48 hours later saying they couldn't actually identify you because your rear windows were tinted.
The windows were tinted, and in fact they were stopping them from behind, weren't
exactly.
They? So
I don't
they
know.
weren't actually looking at who was driving the car.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it may well be if you drive through Hackney 10 times, no matter who you are, one of those times that you're driving through it, you might get pulled over.
Exactly.
Particularly if you're in a type of car that they're looking out for. Because apparently those are the types of cars that have been coming down to London to steal other cars.
Exactly, from a particular region of the country. So yeah, I'm still working on that. I'm not letting it up. I don't like having to talk about Don Butler, but I just think, something like this shouldn't be let go.
Well, I think there is the problem with the media at the moment, and people ask me this all the time about with relation to coronavirus, is why do the media so go along with whatever the kind of narrative from the government is? Because they've sort of forgotten that they're supposed to question people.
Yep.
And because of the sort of 24/7 news agenda that we now have, things do get forgotten.
Yeah.
You have, look at this Margaret Ferrier woman from the SNP. She's just basically taken the view that she's going to sit it out and she's not going to resign, even though she's been asked to resign, even though she's been told to resign by the SNP's boss, which is Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah.
She's just taken the view that people will just forget about it.
Forget about it, yeah.
And I'm like you with Dawn Butler. I'm just going to keep mentioning her, and I'm going to keep asking on Twitter why she hasn't resigned, why she hasn't, fallen on a sword, because she should. She should,
yeah. There should be honour in our politics to some extent. It's still a greasy game, but you shouldn't be able to do stuff like that and just get away with it.
And there should be some form of. I get the sort of the principle that you represent your constituents, and that's fine. So you can't be sacked by your own sort of party. However, you'd have to also argue that the only reason she's in that job is because she was standing as an SNP candidate.
Yeah.
If she'd been standing on her own, that
she
would be different.
Wouldn't
she wouldn't be there. So that's what I think she should at the very least allow people to vote again and see if they want her.
Exactly.
Because for her to go, oh no, I represent my Rutherglen constituents and they all love me. Oh really? Well, let's have a, let's.
I don't think they really care that much.
Let's see the proof in the pudding. I really don't think so. And apparently, it was quite a narrow victory against Labour.
Yeah.
So actually, for the opposition that you speak of, who are apparently run by somebody called Sir Keir Starmer, they could actually make inroads. They could get a seat. In Scotland.
Another seat for Labour. That would
what it would show is at least that people quite like Keir Starmer, and if they're going to vote for him in Scotland in one place, that's at least something. Because at the moment, there's no indication that he's going to come anywhere close to winning, even as bad as the Tories are right now,
I think everyone is tuning out. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think everyone's tuning out from the mainstream media. Everyone's tuning out of politics. Yeah. So I don't even think we are going back to that phase where people were so impassioned by certain leaders. Like, as controversial as Blair was, he was someone that, inspired passion. I don't know anyone.
Well, Boris, I think, has been a massive disappointment because all I now see, and I know that Twitter's not necessarily a good thermometer of these things, but all I see now is everyone's fed up with him. Yeah. They just want rid of him. They're disappointed. They feel let down. They hoped that he was going to be this kind of, talisman type figure, and he's just turned out to be an absolute waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just now hiding and making really awkward, uncomfortable speeches. It's quite tragic.
Now here we are. We're in Black History Month, right? So what's happened to Black Lives Matter? They've gone very quiet.
I know, it's very weird. It's almost like it's
almost like they came out of their shell and now they've run back into it.
Yep, exactly. And
I can only assume that they must have achieved whatever it was that they wanted to achieve.
Apparently, they received over £1.2 million in funding. Apparently, there's some legalities about getting that money released.
Oh yeah,
because there's not actually a solid structure for them to actually spend it through. Right. I don't know. That's what I've been hearing, but they can't actually sort of withdraw the funds.
Right.
So that's something.
But also, it's not that clear who's running it.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean,
there is no
organisation,
face of it in this country. It's so crazy.
I mean, we spoke to this guy called Gary McFarlane, who apparently was one of the sort of founding members of it.
Yeah, I saw
but
that
he's
video.
a Trotskyist. He's a Socialist Worker Party guy. Yeah. You know, very left wing Marxist. Wants to kind of destabilise the state and all of that. I'm not sure that he is recognisable as, say, the head of it.
Yeah.
Because people like him are never the head of anything because they don't believe in being the heads of anything.
Yeah, and this is the thing people keep forgetting, which I don't understand. Black Lives Matter in the UK in 2016 was just a bunch of 13-year-old, misfits basically that were blocking a road to Heathrow during a busy summer period that got arrested and then charged.
Right.
That was Black Lives Matter in the UK. They were literally a non-entity. And then, following this uprising in the US, for instance, they have just ridden that wave. Now our intelligent Premier League players were wearing the Black Lives Matter on their jerseys. Right. People like Lewis Hamilton, who are, incredible political minds, have taken up the cause. I mean, they've just blown up in a way that...
I think the most ridiculous thing I saw was either last weekend or the weekend before, Roy Hodgson, who's quite an old man, kneeling in the dugout, right? And somebody had put underneath it, I hope he can get up after kneeling down, because he was kneeling down in sympathy, taking the knee, but he wasn't really. It was like your old grandfather in church. He was kind of genuflecting slightly, but he wasn't really
keeling over.
Because he didn't look like he could get up again. And you just think, come on, guys.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. So I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna vanish anytime soon. I still think I just think the conversation around even Black Lives Matter has still become very stifled now, because there are people that are like, yeah, but we want to support it, but then they're just like, yeah, but the organization. I'm like, right, they're one and the same. If you weren't saying Black Lives Matter before this organization, you are supporting the organization. It's not an excuse to say, oh, but we think Black Lives Matter. I'm pretty sure you were a decent enough person to not think that any lives didn't matter. Right. So it shouldn't take this organization for you to feel so conflicted. I know. To be, and all these kind of virtue signalling companies like Sainsbury's and everybody else who came out and went, oh, we're doing this now. Yeah. Really? Okay then. Yeah. Well done. Absolutely unbelievable. Well, listen, great to see you again, Esther, and thank you for coming in. We're going to be doing Plank of the Week this afternoon with Martin Daubney and Esther, which should be relatively hilarious, I would think. There's loads and loads of people that we're going to nominate. I can think of 5 just right now off the top of my head. But Esther will be back same time next week.